Okay, it's time for an analysis of my game with Pharaoh. I made a video of this, and so now here's the analysis. I'm going to go over the opening first. So e4, c6, Caro Kann defense, and I play knight c3, which is not the most common move, uh, but this is the beginning of the two knights defense. And so usually black will play d5 as he did, and now I play knight f3. So the two knights. Defense, I keep saying defense. Defense usually refers to a black opening, so it's the two knights, or the two knights attack, I guess. Anyway. So he takes the pawn, and during the game I was happy to see this move, even though it's not inherently such a bad move. But, so of course I recapture. And then I was kind of nonplussed to see knight f6, which is also a pretty good move. But what I'm more used to actually at my level is the move bishop f5, which is also not such a bad move, although I think it's a little bit suboptimal. But what it leads to, typically, is advantageous for white if black doesn't understand the difference between the two knights and the more standard approach to the Caro Kann. So let me back up to the main line of the Caro Kann. Hopefully this will make sense. So alright, e4, c6, the Caro Kann. The most common move is d4, which usually if you have an opportunity to put two pawns in the center like that, you do it, and c6 doesn't challenge that, so this is the standard approach to the Caro Kann. And again, black plays d5. Now here at the master level, so I'm going to switch the opening explorer. This is within Lichess to just look at master games. The most common move then, you can see here if you can read it, is e5, the advanced variation, but the second is knight c3, and then knight d2 is played also. Those usually lead to the same thing. I'll put up the knight c3 version. And so here black almost always is going to capture. You get a recapture, and then there's a couple ways to handle this, but the main line is bishop f5. This is the classical variation of the Caro Kann. You get knight g3 attacking the bishop goes back. And then typically h4, which threatens to trap the bishop, because if white were to get another move, they could play h5, and the bishop would be out of squares. So in order to defend against that, I don't know why that keeps fading out, these moves over here. I have to mouse over it. Anyway, so black has to give the bishop a square to retreat to. So h6. This is the classical variation. Many games have been played from here. And okay, so now keeping that in mind, what frequently happens at my level in the two knights, so e4, c6, now knight c3, the move I played, and we're back to the game, d5, knight f3, black can again play d takes e4, which, as I said, it's not inherently a bad move. But if black tries to play this as if it's the classical variation, then the fact that I move knight f3 instead of d4 is going to present a problem. So the way that would go, okay, so actually in the game, black played knight f6. But what I've seen more often, and actually if I look at the database here on Lichess, okay, so usually if I want to look to see what people are playing, I'll filter by average rating, and I'll go 2,000, 2,200, 2,500, Blitz, Rapid, or Classical, so maybe not Grandmaster level players, but pretty good players, better than me. Okay, so if I put it on that setting, then the next move here is most commonly knight f6, which is probably the best move, or knight d7, either of those. And the win percentage for white is 48 to 44 for knight f6 versus 52 to 41 for knight d7. Those are both pretty good moves. Bishop f5 is a little bit inferior, but if black isn't familiar with the two knights, then they might play bishop f5. Okay, so you can see though bishop f5 is only the fourth choice. Now, let me change that filter. Let me go to players more at my level. So let's go 1600, 1800, and get rid of the higher ratings. So now I'm filtering 1600, 1800, Blitz, Rapid, and Classical. I always leave Bullet out because I don't play that time control. Anyway, so now if I do that, now look at how this is shifted. Bishop f5 is up at top. And this is because lower level players maybe aren't that familiar with the two knights, which is an argument for me playing it, actually. Okay, so now here bishop f5 has become the most popular move. And so if they play bishop f5, now, just as in the classical, which I showed earlier, one of the main lines of the Caro Kann, I can play knight g3. And even here, black isn't in so much trouble yet, but if they play bishop g6, and I play h4, and they play this as like the classical, which I showed earlier, go to the earlier part of the video where I went over this. The only difference in the position is that I have a knight on f3 instead of a pawn on d4, but it makes a big difference. So they might try to play this the same way. So h6, again, trying to defend the bishop, prevent the bishop from being trapped. But now I have the move knight e5, which I wouldn't have in the classical variation because of the knight on f3. So, alright, black maybe thinks no big deal. Bishop h7. You can see that's by far the top move. You can also see the win percentage for white is 77%. So this is already getting bad for black. Okay, so bishop h7. And now, queen h5. Threatening checkmate. So black has to respond to this. Let's see, there's queen d5, and there's g6. So against queen, let's see, against queen d5, what do I do? Oh yeah, I've had this happen. Against queen d5, we could get bishop c4, attacking the queen, protected by the knight, the bishop is. So that's one variation, which is bad for black. You can see that the computer is already evaluating this as plus 5.3, which is clearly a winning advantage. Or the other way it could go would be g6. It's actually the better defense, but this is still plus 2.1. And so from here, queen comes back to f3. Again, still threatening checkmate. So knight f6 to block this. And now, queen b3, which is a double attack, threatening checkmate again, also though threatening the pawn on b7. There are ways for black to create complications here, but this should be a winning advantage for white. Okay, so that's what I was, let's go back. When I saw, so we had knight f3, d takes e4, knight takes e4. So I was expecting bishop f5. And so that's why I was kind of happy to see this, because I thought maybe it would go down this line. I've won a few games that way. My opponent didn't do that. I think my opponent was actually pretty familiar with the opening and played a good move, knight f6. And so here, I actually wasn't quite sure what to do. Taking the knight turns out to be reasonable. You double black's pawns. The move, though, that I have been trying to learn, because I'm studying a Chessable, there's a website called Chessable. I've been studying a Chessable repertoire called Keep It Simple 1e4, which offers white a system for playing against all different defenses. And for the Caro Kann, it recommends the two knights, which is why I'm playing this. And so the move recommended, not that the move I played was bad, but the move recommended is queen e2. Okay, but I didn't play that. And I didn't really know the line, so I just played knight takes f6. Let me go back to the master's database here. Which is, there's nothing wrong with it. Knight takes f6 or queen e2. Those are both reasonable moves. Okay, so knight takes f6, and it's possible for black to recapture either with the e-pawn or the g-pawn. The e-pawn capture is a bit more popular, and when I ran this through Stockfish, that's the preferred way of recapturing also. Anyway, so there's that. Bishop c4 is a pretty good move. Bishop d6 is a good move. D4 is probably suboptimal. Queen e2 is better, but not a huge blunder. Anyway, so bishop g4. Now here I ended up getting into trouble after I played h3 when there was a check and I didn't deal with it appropriately. It turns out that h3 is an okay move. Let me switch databases here because there aren't very many master games in this line anymore, but there are plenty at lower levels. So after bishop g4 I played h3. Castling though would have been an easy way to, particularly since I wasn't familiar with the opening. Really here I should have just castled, get my king off the open file. But I didn't do that. I played h3, queen e7, and no, the opening database is no help. Okay, here I played queen e2, which still I guess isn't terrible, but I ended up with the doubled f-pawns after because my queen is pinned, and so he took the knight. What I could have done is just bishop e3. Okay, but I played queen e2, so I'm going to say that's probably my first mistake. Bishop takes f3. Now I can either take the bishop right away, or I can trade queens as I did. I'm not sure really which is better. So, okay. We get this position, and I have this weakness. The engine, somewhat surprisingly, is still saying that white has an advantage. Or it was saying that. Now, plus 0.2, so not much of an advantage. Personally, just looking at it, I don't like this pawn weakness. Anyway, so knight d7. And I played bishop f4. That's a good square to develop the bishop to. Knight b6. And bishop d3. It likes bishop b3 a little better, but bishop d3 is okay. Okay, castle queenside, and here, well, I guess you can see with the arrow what the best move is, but yeah. Wait. Oh, okay, c3. And knight d5. Okay, here I missed. This is a big miss on my part. I could have had a winning advantage here. Because if I go bishop to f5, the king doesn't have any squares, and so the only way to get out of check is to block with the rook, so I'm going to win the exchange there. So, bishop f5, and both of my bishops are sweeping through here, and so he has to block with the rook. I could either take that rook right away, or if I want, I can back off. I can move my bishop back and take it later since it's pinned. Okay, but I didn't see that. So instead I play bishop h2. Not really sure whether h2 is a better square than g3, but anyway, I missed an opportunity to win the exchange. So, all right, so we get to here. And a castle, that's all sensible. Black has a half a pawn advantage. F5. Okay, rook h to e1, fine. H to e8. And I start trying to double my rooks on the e file. And f4 is played. Okay, now I could have kicked the knight away with c4, since the knight is protecting that pawn. Instead I played rook d to e1, which is probably a little bit of a mistake. King d7. Now bishop c4. Again, it still wants me to push that pawn, just to kick that knight away so that I can take the f-pawn. I play here. And he plays f5, which makes it easy for me, and now finally I can get rid of that knight. So we have this exchange. Okay, now I'm up a pawn. Bishop h4. And it doesn't particularly like my exchanging the rooks, although it's nothing catastrophic. Prefers rook e5. Let's see, let me look at the rook e5 line. Okay, so here it's saying black. I'll just put in the engine's move for black. Okay, so we exchange rooks, and I'm also attacking that d pawn. And I control the e file. Okay. So king c8. He can protect the pawn. So it wants me to move my king to the d file, giving up, I guess, this f pawn. Not sure why it wants me to give up that pawn. Let's see. So it's saying king d1, bishop takes, and it's giving me plus 1.6. Pawns are equal. So where's my advantage exactly? You can either move the rook or you can counterattack my rook, either way. Alright, let's get back to the game. So instead I trade off the rooks. Okay, I played bishop g3. It seems to prefer bishop e3. Let's see, so I go here, g5 check, f4, d7. Okay. And according to the engine, these moves all look pretty reasonable. So 2, king d6, king d3, b5. Maybe that wasn't the best. I don't know, though. It's going from plus 0.2 to 0. I don't know that is particularly significant. Let's see. It prefers bishop f2 here. I don't know that I have anything more than... This looks pretty drawish, the plus 0.2. I don't know that means too much. Okay, moving on. So b takes, d6, and now I opted for c5. I think that's probably a good move. I get a passed pawn here that ends up being a thorn in his side for the rest of the game. c7. a4 really is, all this does is it brings the pawn up closer to where he can capture it. I don't think, probably should have just left the a pawn where it was. But then, okay, let me just play a few moves and see what the computer's recommending here. So it's saying king e3. I don't know what that does at all. I bet this is just sort of headed for a draw. If I play the computer's moves, let me just try it. And then King D3. So the computer doesn't know how to proceed. Then we go here. Yeah, okay. We can see where that's headed. So that's just repeating moves. So it doesn't see anything better than a draw. Okay, back to the game. So I played A4 here, which, yeah, I don't see the usefulness of that, except that my thought was to keep the king out of B5. Maybe that has some merit. I don't know. Okay, so he played king B7. If he wants to get to that A pawn, he has to take a little bit more circuitous of a route, but he can still go to A6, A5. So king C3, king A6, king B4, and the bishop check. And this is all showing zeros for the engine, so it's even or drawish or however you want to look at it. King B3, bishop D2. Okay, here, bishop H2, I made a mistake. So let me see how that's a mistake. What could black have done? Aha, okay. So after bishop H2, it's claiming that black is winning. So let me see. Black played king A5 and it goes back to zeros, but it's saying best move is bishop E3. Okay, so attacking this pawn, and if I want to protect it, I go king C2, but then I'm not going to be able to protect that A pawn because my king. Okay, so my king is having to protect the pawn on D4. My bishop is protecting the pawn on F4, and also my bishop can't ever get out of H2, G3. That's it. Like the bishop can't go anywhere else. All right. So what's black's next move? So king C3. Okay. So that's it's saying zeros again. Wait a minute. What happened here? Okay, I'm going to go back here. Okay, so bishop H2 it's saying is a mistake, and that black should have responded with bishop E3. Do a deeper analysis of that, because then it's showing zeros again. So was bishop H2 really that much of a mistake? That's weird. It goes from minus 1.8, which says that black is up by almost 2 pawns. But then as soon as I do its recommended move for black, it's saying zeros. What's going on? Trying to figure out this discrepancy here where it says bishop H2 is this big mistake, but I don't see how black takes advantage of it. Well, it's saying that black's best move is bishop E3. Okay, king C3. I'm just doing the engine moves. Now it says bishop f2. King d3. King b7. Okay. Does black actually have anything here? King c3. So just... Okay, so is the king going to come around? What's happening here? King c7. My king's just going back and forth, looks like. King d3, king b8. What? How does black... this doesn't... I don't see what black's doing. This might be... The computer is saying minus 1.5, but this might be a meaningless advantage. I don't understand. King b7. I don't see black making any progress following the computer moves. King d3. Okay, finally, king a6. I don't know why I didn't do that earlier. If it gets that a pawn. Okay, so king c3. My king is stuck trying to guard that pawn. Now finally, king a5. I don't know why the... Okay. I'm still having to defend the d pawn. Now the bishop goes around there. I guess you could take the a pawn any time. Okay. Well, he's also got to prevent my pawn from running. So that's in c3. I'm not going to be able to protect that pawn. Okay, I can see that I've got a problem here. So I guess maybe that's winning for black. All right. Instead, black played king a5. Let's move this along. And we're back to a drawish position. Okay, bishop g3, h5, and now I guess I repeat the same mistake. And it's recommending bishop e3, which this time black does. Okay, so now black should be winning. We're in the actual game now. Black should be winning. So king c3, I have to play bishop f2. Okay, so now it looks like black is actually following that plan. And I play king d3, h4, and c3. I'm just having to keep an eye on that pawn. Bishop e3. I'm not sure why he doesn't take the a. Well, I guess I am sure why he doesn't take the a pawn, because he needs to stop my c pawn from advancing. Okay, king d3, bishop f2. We're going in circles. King c3. Okay, finally, bishop e1. Inaccuracy. Best move was bishop g3. Okay, so after bishop g3, because he doesn't want to take it, or the h-pawn will recapture, and then that's going to be a queen. So my bishop has to go here. And now he can take that pawn, and he also knows that if my c-pawn runs, he's got bishop takes f4, and he's going to be able to stop that pawn. So now takes, but I can go here. But now the king can come back. Okay, that looks like should be good for black. All right. What he actually did was bishop e1, check. King d3. Now he can take, because he knows that his bishop can get back to prevent my c-pawn from advancing. Because he has bishop to a5. Okay, so I played bishop g1, king b5, bishop e3, a5, bishop d2. This is probably still in the range of a draw. Okay, but now bishop takes d2 is a huge mistake on my opponent's part. He should have played bishop g3. And then what do we have? Probably just a draw. E3. I'm just putting moves on the board. Okay. Anyway, what he actually played was bishop takes d2. I take, and it shows here that I have a plus 22.3, so a winning advantage, which I didn't realize. So a4, I go over, I have to stop the pawn. For the rest of the game, it's showing me having a winning advantage. And here I thought these pawns sort of canceled each other out, so I offered a draw, but I shouldn't have, because it says that I'm winning. So let me play out the computer moves and see how this actually wins. So black wants to try to protect the pawn, but now I can give up this pawn, and when I give up the pawn, so he'll take that pawn, and then I can take the a pawn, and then my king is advanced enough that I guess eventually I'm going to be able to get the d pawn. So let's see how that would play out if I just follow the computer's recommendations. So he's going to have to go after that pawn. I take, he takes. Now my king advances. He can't come up, so I'll just follow the computer's moves here. So now my king is penetrated far enough, it looks like I'm going to be able to pick up that d pawn. It goes here, but now I oppose the king in such a way that he's going to have to give up ground. So he could go here. I come here, and now the king has no squares to protect that pawn. So he has to go over here maybe. I take, I have a passed pawn, from there I win. Okay, so I shouldn't have agreed to the draw. Alright, so that concludes my analysis.